Let's introduce political correspondent at the Times and the Sunday Times, John Boothman. Welcome, John.
How you doing, Kevin?
Good to have you on board. Well, look, bear with us and let's play a few clips. You're going to like this one. This is Ed Davey, the Lib Dem leader, in his concluding speech at the Bournemouth party conference for the Lib Dems. Check this out.
Farage, Nigel Farage. Give Farage so much time and attention. Farage. Nigel Farage, Nigel Farage. Farage's Britain. Nigel and Farage's Britain. Farage's Britain. The threat that reform now poses to our country and our democracy. Farage's Britain. Nigel Farage.
So, yes, John, in that speech to the Lib Dem faithful in Bournemouth, I believe it was yesterday, the Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, mentioned Nigel Farage 33 times. So I think he feels somewhat threatened. The Prime Minister on Friday is due to give a speech. It's his new obsession, reclaiming the flag from the far right. That will, of course, focus on Farage. We know about Keir Starmer's obsession with Farage. Why do both of these guys have this obsession, do you think, John?
Look, they're completely afraid of Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage won, 5 seats, I think, now reduced to 4 at the general election last year. He's now running, 10 points, is it, ahead of Labour? Certainly a number of points ahead of Labour in the opinion polls, up around 30%. So, yeah, they've much to fear for Nigel Farage, but there's a real quandary for any of these political parties, which is the more they talk about Farage, the more publicity he gets. So they tried to ignore him for a bit. Ignoring him didn't work, and now they're talking about him all the time, and because they're talking about him all the time, the more exposure he gets.
Yeah, exactly right. And old Ed Davey, you see, Farage, I think, understands the British people, the common man, if you like, and woman, I should say. And he gels with them. What he says, people respond to it. Now, perhaps I'm not representative of people all over the country, but I think maybe I'm slightly clued in. But when old Ed Davey said, under Nigel Farage, Britain will become like Trump's America. And I thought to myself, well, it works for me. Yeah, good. I'll vote for Farage then. So do you see what I mean?
That's one way of looking at it. I mean, look, one of the things I think you're entirely correct to say, that actually, like Trump, Farage talks the language of ordinary people. And actually, any of the other traditional party leaders, and that's if anybody, of course, knows who Ed Davey is, right? And I don't say that lightly. People know who Nigel Farage is. If you were to do a poll in the street of how many people knew who Sir Ed Davey was, you'd probably, be struggling a bit for a lot of people to identify who he is. And the fact is that people on the right of politics, as I say, whether it's in the UK or whether it's in the US, talk the language of ordinary people. It's the language that people understand. It's the language they talk themselves. Maybe other politicians don't particularly like it, but look, it resonates with ordinary folk. I mean, I listened to Ed Davey there, evoking, I remember John, do you remember John Major back, I think, in the 80s, talking about warm beer and leather and willow and all that? I mean, I heard Ed Davey today talking about, Britain being a country of fish and chips and village greens and cricket pavilions and all that.
If only, John, if only.
No, not really, not anymore, right?
Exactly.
I just don't think that it's the kind of language that resonates with people. Look, if Ed Davey's got partly a point, right, it's that, I mean, I noticed he was complaining about the BBC the other day. Ed Davey feels a bit hard done to. He won 72 seats last year. As I said earlier, Reform won 5. But the fact of the matter is, Ed Davey's not a newsmaker. He's not somebody who, has got a great turn of phrase. He's reduced to sort of, I don't know, climbing up poles, coming down
water sports. He's a big fan of water sports, falling off canoes and things like that.
Yeah, running around the other day, right, with a red sash and a marching band behind it. I mean, sorry, if you're reduced to having to do that to get a hearing, you're not in a very good place.
Yeah.
And, you know, that applies to some of the other party leaders as well. It applies to Kemi Badenoch. You know, that nobody wants to hear from the Tories. They've heard it all before. I keep saying in Scotland that if, certainly in Scotland, and I'm sure this is the case for other parts of the UK, if Nelson Mandela and Mother Teresa were the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, they still wouldn't get a hearing. People don't want to hear from them. And that, as well as the point I'm making about language and speaking the language of ordinary people, is just so important in terms of political communication.
Exactly right. When you see Nigel Farage having a pint, you know that he's enjoying a pint. Probably a cigarette as well, knowing him. When you see Ed Davey drinking a pint, it's performative, it's for the cameras. Look, I'm a man of the people, enjoying my pint. You know, just as soon as the camera's shut, he'll move on to some glass of extremely expensive Bordeaux or something like that. What did you make of Ed Davey's extraordinary claim in that Nigel Farage strewn speech that he made at the party conference, that Farage will roll back gun laws and turn Britain into Trump's America. And extraordinarily, he said, British children will be forced to undergo drills to prepare for mass shootings if Nigel Farage becomes Prime Minister. That's pretty desperate, isn't it?
Well, I can see what Ed Davey's trying to do. Ed Davey's trying to say Trump's not particularly popular with huge sections of people in Britain, soft conservatives, for example, that he might be trying to entice. So associate Trump with Farage and maybe some people will come in his direction. However, I think the things that you're saying, this stuff about, you know, relaxing gun laws, I mean, nobody believes that. Right?
It's nonsense.
Nobody,
it's desperate. It's
desperate.
It. It's desperate.
It's as comedians in Scotland would say, it's a bit too far.
Exactly right. Now, let's move on to old Starmer. He's going to make this speech. His new obsession is reclaiming the flag. Reclaim the flag from far-right organisations. So, reclaim the flag. He's going to make a big speech on Friday. And he's going to say that the St George's and Union flags are for all of us and should be symbols of unity. He also is obsessed with Nigel Farage, isn't he? This speech will also attack, this is what I find interesting, this Prime Minister's speech on Friday will attack the rise of divisive populism. Now, what I always find interesting is, you know, populism, if you define, the actual definition of populism is policies that are popular with the people. Of course, that's anathema to someone like Keir Starmer because he has no idea how to come up with popular policies. But this idea, that it's always, isn't it? It's always unpopular politicians that attack populism. I never quite get it. I mean, I know you can say, oh, well, Hitler was a populist, Mussolini was a populist. But to just say, oh, you're a populist, well, the real tenor of that accusation is, you're the sort of politician who comes up with policies that people like. I hate you. You know, do you know what I mean? It's unpopular politicians always attack populism.
Well, you know, we're only, 14 months or something away from the last general election, and there was a good dose of populism in the stuff that Keir Starmer was saying for a couple of years before that, to be honest. I mean, the flags issue I'm interested in. I mean, he may say that you want to reclaim the Union flag and reclaim the St George's Cross, but you know what? That'll go down well in England, perhaps. It certainly won't go down in Scotland very well, nor in Wales, nor you know, among some sections of people in Northern Ireland. You know, the whole flag thing I find really quite odd, simply in the basis that, you know, in recent weeks in Scotland, we've seen the saltire being displayed along lampposts, and the people who are displaying those saltires on lampposts are widely regarded as people as being on the right and anti-immigration, and it's put the SNP in a bit of a quandary because they think the saltire, the Scottish flag, is their flag. So they're saying take them down, when it's like, wait a minute, so the Scottish flag's okay as long as it's them that puts it up, but if other Scottish people who believe something else put it up, then they've not to have it. So dangerous and funny old business, the stuff about flags, and I don't see at the end of the day, right, reclaiming the flag for somebody like Starmer wins them any votes or weigh anybody very much, to be quite honest.
Also, John, you know, was it 2 weeks ago, there was the Unite the Kingdom march in London. Estimations of the crowd vary from about 110,000 to 500,000. I think it was, I was actually down there for a while, not taking part. I was on my way to the football, but I did go through the middle of it. And I would say that the crowd was somewhere between the two, possibly 300,000, maybe as many as 500,000. A huge crowd. But you saw it. It was a mass of Union Jacks and St George's flags. And yet the Prime Minister wanted to depict this entire demonstration, this protest against his government, as, you know, a convergence of the far right. Well, it just wasn't. Yes, Tommy Robinson was involved. Yes, Tommy Robinson did quite a lot of the organising, but I saw it, and I know a lot of people who went. They're not far right. This was actually people from all walks of life coming together to protest about this dreadful government we've got. Not talking about their politics, I'm talking about their competence. It was a protest against their incompetence. And Starmer's sort of urge every time he sees a flag or he sees protests to say they're all Tommy Robinsons is his downfall. It was his mistake during the Southport riots to say every protester was far right. Everybody who opposes him, he wants to depict as far right, and he should get out of that habit because it doesn't do him any good.
I think what happens in these situations, look, don't get me wrong, you know, there are obviously some elements in any of these demonstrations that are problematic, but I think when you see 150,000 or whatever the estimate happens to be, people marching in the street, you know there's an issue there, and it's an issue that ordinary people around about the country actually care about. Look, you don't need to look any further than any opinion polls that tell us that, you know, 2 years ago, the NHS and the economy by a country mile were the big issues that dominated any of the political discourse in this country and the things that people really care about. All over the country now, you see in any of these polls now that immigration is right up there, for good or for ill. That's where it is, and people have got very strong opinions on it. And if the Prime Minister depicts you know, all of the people who are concerned and worried about these issues again for good or for ill, the fact of the matter is all he's going to do is alienate people.
Yeah, and one other thing, he just has this habit. He wants to demonise crowds that protest against him, against Labour, against the migration crisis. He has this habit, and he actually talks about in this the Unite the Kingdom march, attended by, let's agree on, say, 250,000. He talked about unacceptable scenes of violence against the police. So let's say there were 250,000 people there. Do you know how many arrests there were? 25. And one thing I did see in my brief encounter with that march was a load of cops standing around, bored out of their heads, because it wasn't violence. It was a party atmosphere. It was quite a nice family event to a large degree. So he says, oh, scenes of unacceptable violence, far right. He does himself no favours, does he?
Look, you look at where Starmer is in the opinion polls now. This stuff is getting to a place where he's in a very difficult situation. This isn't going to be a good conference for Starmer at all. We all know already that the budget is going to be a bit of a car crash. You've already got people like Andy Burnham lining up effectively to start to, put it into people's heads that perhaps there needs to be somebody else. My prediction about where Starmer goes is, depending on what happens in the May elections next year, the local elections in England, the Scottish election and the Welsh election, that let's see if he lasts beyond that. I can't see any possibility of Starmer leading Labour into the next general election.
Yeah, I think very significantly, I don't know if you've seen the new edition of the New Statesman, the sort of Labour Bible, as it were. Huge, grinning, kind of film star picture of Andy Burnham on the front, forward with Britain and all this kind of stuff. So the Labour elite, I think, are gathering around Burnham as a possible replacement. Can I just get, before you go, John, great to talk to you, by the way. Thanks for coming on. A quick comment from you talking about going forward with Keir Starmer and his potentially dubious future. What do you make of the Morgan McSweeney situation? Do you think Morgan McSweeney is close to the abyss?
Well, I think so, because, Starmer's defended him, Starmer appointed him, he's been with Starmer all along, but look, at the end of the day, Starmer needs a shield at the moment, and I just think he's the guy in between Starmer going and being in trouble, and I can't see him really lasting, to be honest. Somebody has to be the sacrificial lamb in that. Everything that's gone on from day one that they came into government, fantastically well prepared for the election, fantastically ill prepared for government. Yep. The first thing they did was get into bother about suits and about specs, and then a month later the winter fuel payment, and it's been all downhill ever since. Yeah. And if McSweeney's the main strategist round about that, then he's the guy that has to go.
Yeah, and Starmer's particular problem, if McSweeney goes, he's already got Angela Rayner peeing outside the tent, throwing bricks at him, signs that she will hook up with Andy Burnham in a return to sort of power. Also, of course, very dangerously, Peter Mandelson, who's furious with the Prime Minister, he's peeing outside the tent. If you add to those two Morgan McSweeney peeing outside the tent, I think that's it. Starmer's over. Fascinating times, John, and great to talk to you. Thank you so much.